I'm Morgan Reynolds, 32 years old, and I just got the call that changed everything. My sister Alison's voice bubbled with excitement as she announced her fifth pregnancy. Meanwhile, I stood in my kitchen surrounded by homework assignments, mismatched socks, and 4 lunch boxes I'd packed for her other children. My heart sank as reality hit me. I'd spent the last 13 years raising her kids while my own life disappeared. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever had to make a tough choice between family obligations and your own sanity. Alison and I weren't always in this complicated situation. Growing up in a modest neighborhood outside of Pittsburgh, we were typical sisters with just 3 years between us. She was the adventurous one, always climbing the highest trees and making friends effortlessly. I was quieter, more cautious, preferring books and planning. Despite our differences, we were close, sharing clothes, secrets, and dreams about our futures. Everything changed when our parents divorced during my freshman year of high school. Dad moved across the country for a new job, and Mom fell into a depression that left her emotionally unavailable. At 15, I responded by becoming even more responsible, maintaining good grades, cooking meals, and keeping the household running. Alison, then 18, went the opposite direction. She started skipping school, staying out all night, and dating guys Mom and Dad would have never approved of. I still remember the night she didn't come home after prom. I sat up waiting, calling her friends until 4 a.m. while Mom took a sleeping pill and checked out. When Alison finally stumbled in at sunrise, she laughed at my worry. That moment crystallized our diverging paths. While I worked my way through community college and then transferred to finish my healthcare administration degree, Alison bounced between retail jobs, apartments, and boyfriends. I worried about her but focused on building my stable, if unexciting, life. By 28, I had secured a decent position at a local hospital, rented a modest 2-bedroom apartment, and even started saving for my own home someday. Then came the first call that would change everything. Alison was 22 and pregnant. The father, a bartender named Chris she'd been dating for just 4 months, wasn't interested in parenthood. Our mother, still struggling with her own issues, offered only criticism. Dad sent money from California but little else. So naturally, Alison turned to me. "It'll just be until I get on my feet," she promised, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope that tugged at my heart. "I just need a little help at first." I believed her. Of course I did. She was my sister, and despite everything, I loved her. So I helped her find prenatal care, went to her appointments, held her hand through labor, and fell instantly in love with my nephew Jaden when he was born. Those first few months, I babysit while Alison worked retail hours, bought diapers when money was tight, and didn't complain when my weekend plans were canceled for emergency childcare. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a pattern that would consume the next decade of my life. Tyler came along 2 years later. Alison had been dating Ryan, a charming sales rep who disappeared the moment she mentioned her pregnancy test. By then, I'd moved into my current apartment specifically because it had a second bedroom where Jaden could stay on the increasingly frequent nights when Alison worked late or needed me time. My modest apartment slowly transformed. The spare room filled with 2 small beds. My linen closet held dinosaur sheets and superhero towels. The refrigerator door displayed crayon drawings and spelling tests. My weekends, once filled with friends and dating, became soccer games and birthday parties at Chuck E. Cheese. "You're such a natural with them," people would say, assuming I'd chosen this life. The truth was more complicated. I loved those boys fiercely, Jaden with his thoughtful nature and Tyler with his contagious laugh, but I never intended to become their primary caregiver. When Alison announced her pregnancy with Sophia, I wasn't even surprised. She'd been dating Mark for almost a year, and though he stuck around through the pregnancy, he moved to Ohio for a job opportunity when Sophia was just 6 months old. He sent occasional child support payments but wasn't involved in daily parenting. By then, my role had expanded. I wasn't just the weekend babysitter anymore. I was the one who knew Tyler was allergic to strawberries, that Jaden needed extra help with math, and that both boys slept better with the hallway light on. I was the emergency contact on school forms, the one who took them for annual checkups, and the one who stayed up late making costumes for school plays. Emma arrived 4 years ago, the result of a brief reconciliation between Alison and Mark that didn't last. By then, I had a system, color-coded calendars tracking each child's activities, a network of other parents for carpooling, and a budget stretched to its breaking point to cover everything from soccer cleats to science fair supplies. What I didn't have was a life of my own. Dating became nearly impossible. What man wants to sign up for an instant family of 4 children who aren't even yours? Travel plans were repeatedly postponed. The promotion that required evening MBA classes? I turned it down because who would help the kids with homework? The savings account for my own home dwindled as I covered emergency dental work, school field trips, and the ever-increasing cost of feeding growing children. Don't misunderstand, I love those kids with every fiber of my being. Jaden, now 13, is thoughtful and smart, already talking about college. 11-year-old Tyler makes me laugh with his endless energy and creativity. Sophia, 7, has her father's artistic talent and her mother's charm. And little Emma, 4, with her curious mind and fierce independence, reminds me so much of Alison before life got complicated. But as much as I love them, I never chose to be their mother. That role belonged to Alison, who drifted in and out of their lives like a favorite aunt rather than a parent. She'd show up with fun outings and presents, take countless selfies for social media portraying perfect motherhood, then disappear when the real work began. She bounced between jobs, retail, waitressing, brief stints in offices, never finding stability. Her housing situation was equally unstable, moving between apartments, boyfriends' places, and occasionally back to our mother's house. All while I put my life on indefinite hold. My typical Monday began at 5:30 a.m. While most of my colleagues were hitting snooze or enjoying their first cup of coffee in peaceful silence, I was orchestrating morning chaos. Getting 4 children fed, dressed, and out the door required military precision and infinite patience. Tyler, your science project. Jaden, did you finish that history worksheet? Sophia, please eat something besides the strawberry jam. Emma, sweetheart, shoes go on your feet, not your stuffed animals. After dropping them at 2 different schools and a preschool, I'd rush to work often 10 minutes late despite my best efforts. My supervisor, Barbara, had stopped commenting on my tardiness years ago, though her tight smile spoke volumes. I'd work through lunch to make up time, eating a sandwich at my desk while ordering groceries online or scheduling doctor appointments for the kids. Afternoons meant leaving work promptly at 4, no staying late to impress management, to begin the pickup circuit. Then came homework supervision, dinner preparation, bath time, and bedtime stories. By the time I collapsed on my couch at 9:30 p.m., I barely had energy to scroll through social media before falling asleep, only to repeat it all the next day. Weekends weren't any better. Saturday mornings meant soccer games for Tyler, dance class for Sophia, and trying to keep Emma entertained in the stands. Jaden, thankfully, had reached the age where he could help, often keeping his youngest sister occupied with games on my iPad while I cheered for the others. Grocery shopping with 4 kids in tow was its own special nightmare. Sunday afternoons were dedicated to meal prep for the week, laundry, and helping with larger school projects. The financial strain was just as significant as the time commitment. My health insurance covered all 4 children as dependents since Alison's sporadic employment rarely provided benefits. My credit card carried balances from unexpected expenses, Tyler's emergency room visit when he broke his arm skateboarding, Sophia's specialized reading tutor, Jaden's school trip to Washington, D.C. "You know I'm good for it," Alison would say whenever I mentioned expenses. Sometimes small amounts would appear in my Venmo, $50 here, $75 there, nowhere near covering the actual costs but just enough that she could claim she was contributing. The truly infuriating part was the unpredictability. Just when I'd managed to arrange my schedule around the children's needs, my phone would buzz with Alison's special ringtone. "Morgan, I need a huge favor," she'd begin, voice sugary sweet. "Something came up at work, can you take the kids tonight? The something at work often turned out to be a date or a concert with friends. Once, after rushing to pick up the children on short notice, canceling plans with my one remaining friend, I saw Alison's Instagram story, clearly at a bar, cocktail in hand, timestamped during her supposed work emergency. When confronted, she'd act wounded. I work so hard as a single mom, don't I deserve one night to myself? The guilt trips were masterful. If I pushed back, she'd remind me how the kids looked forward to time with their aunt, implying I'd be disappointing them. Or she'd reference our own childhood, Mom was never there for us, do you want the kids to feel as abandoned as we did? My attempts at setting boundaries never lasted. I'd decide no more last-minute babysitting, then picture Emma waiting alone at preschool when Alison forgot pickup. I'd vow to stop covering extra expenses, then see Tyler's face fall when he couldn't participate in basketball because the registration fee wasn't paid. My friends, the few who remained after years of cancelled plans, didn't understand why I continued enabling Alison's behavior. She takes advantage of you, my college roommate Casey pointed out during our rare lunch meetup. Those kids have become your responsibility because you let them. What choice do I have? I'd respond, frustration evident. It's not the children's fault their mother is unreliable. My coworker Diane was more blunt, she'll never grow up if you keep playing mommy to her and her kids. Even my therapist, whom I could only afford to see monthly, gently suggested I was caught in a codependent relationship with my sister. Dr. Marshall's concerned expression spoke volumes as I described my exhaustion, anxiety, and resentment. When was the last time you did something solely for yourself, Morgan? She asked during one session. I couldn't remember. The children, for their part, clearly understood the dynamics at play despite my efforts to shield them. Jaden, particularly perceptive, once asked why his mother spent more time on her phone than talking to them during dinner. Tyler had taken to calling me mom accidentally, then quickly correcting himself with an embarrassed glance toward Alison. Sophia asked why she couldn't just live with me all the time. Even little Emma, barely verbal when this pattern solidified, ran to me rather than Alison when she was hurt or scared. The most painful part was seeing how this affected them. Jaden had become excessively responsible for his age, parenting his younger siblings when neither Alison nor I was available. Tyler's teacher noted his separation anxiety, clinging to me at drop-offs as if afraid I too might disappear. Sophia developed stomachaches before returning to Alison's apartment after weekends with me. Once, in a moment of desperation, I organized a family intervention. My mother, father, via video call from California, and our Aunt Carol sat with Alison in my living room while the kids were at school. We're worried about the children, I began carefully. They need more stability. Mom immediately undermined the conversation, Morgan's always been dramatic. Alison's doing her best as a single mother. Dad, despite his good intentions, offered only financial solutions, I can increase my monthly contribution if that helps. Aunt Carol, the only one who seemed to grasp the situation, spoke directly, Alison, honey, Morgan has put her life on hold for your children. That's not fair to anyone, not to her, not to you, and certainly not to those kids who don't know from day to day who's taking care of them. Alison stormed out 20 minutes later, accusing us all of judging her when we couldn't possibly understand how hard her life was. The next day, everything continued as if the conversation had never happened. I picked up the kids from school, helped with homework, and made dinner while Alison went for a job interview that mysteriously took 6 hours and smelled like margaritas when she finally came to collect her children. My health began suffering from the constant stress. Migraines became frequent companions. I gained weight from stress eating and lack of time for exercise. My doctor noted elevated blood pressure during my annual physical and suggested stress reduction techniques with a knowing look when I explained my situation. Family is important, she said, but not at the expense of your own health. I nodded, added stress management to my mental to-do list, and promptly forgot about it while dealing with Sophia's science fair project that same evening. And still, I couldn't bring myself to step back. Every time I considered it, I pictured 4 innocent faces, confused and hurt by another adult disappearing from their daily lives. So I continued drowning slowly, watching my own dreams fade while trying to ensure these children had the stability neither Alison nor I had experienced growing up. The call came on a Tuesday evening. I had just settled onto my couch after finally getting Emma to sleep. She'd been fighting a cold and was particularly clingy. The kitchen was still a disaster from dinner, and a mountain of unfolded laundry occupied the armchair, but I'd reached that point of exhaustion where 5 minutes of stillness felt more important than productivity. When my phone lit up with Alison's name, I almost didn't answer. We'd argued the previous day about her forgetting Sophia's dentist appointment, the third medical appointment she'd missed this year, leaving me to rearrange my work schedule at the last minute to take her. But habit and responsibility won out, and I picked up on the fourth ring. "Morgan." Her voice had that breathless quality it got when she was excited. "You're never going to believe what happened." Something in her tone, a familiar mixture of giddiness and underlying expectation, sent warning signals through my brain. "I'm pregnant." "Can you believe it?" "I just took 3 tests to be sure." The room seemed to tilt slightly as her words registered. My free hand gripped the couch cushion, seeking stability as the implications cascaded through my mind. Another child. Another decade of stretched finances, divided attention, and postponed dreams. "Who's the father?" I asked, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. "Jason, that guy I've been seeing from the restaurant. He's really amazing, Morgan. I think this could be the real thing this time." "Jason." The bartender she'd been dating for approximately 4 months. The one she'd mentioned exactly twice in conversation. The real thing, just like Chris, Ryan, Mark, and countless others had been the real thing until responsibility loomed. "Anyway," she continued, not noticing my silence, "I'm going to need some help rearranging the apartment since there's only the 2 bedrooms. I was thinking maybe the boys could stay with you full-time since they're older and need more space. That way I could keep the girls with me and the baby once it comes. Or maybe we could look at bigger places, you know your apartment is really too small for all the weekend stays anyway." She continued chattering about logistics, each word driving a deeper spike of realization into my consciousness. There was no acknowledgement of how this would impact the existing children. No recognition of how much I already shouldered. Just an assumption that I would adjust my life, home, and future around her newest decision. As she spoke, an unexpected memory surfaced. 3 weeks earlier, I'd visited my doctor about persistent headaches and fatigue. After checking my blood pressure, alarmingly elevated for someone my age, Dr. Rivera had looked at me with serious concern. "Morgan, your body is telling you something important," she'd said. "This level of stress isn't sustainable. It's affecting your physical health now, and if it continues, we're looking at serious consequences. Hypertension, heart disease, anxiety disorders. You need to make significant changes." I'd nodded, promised to work on it, and promptly buried the warning beneath another week of managing 2 households and 4 children. The memory collided with another, my performance review the previous month. My supervisor Barbara, despite her sympathy for my situation, had been direct. "Morgan, you're one of our most valuable team members when you're fully present," she'd said carefully. "But these absences and early departures are affecting your advancement opportunities. The director position you're qualified for requires consistent leadership presence. I can't recommend you while your attendance remains unpredictable." A position that would have meant a 30% salary increase. Benefits that could have secured the children's future education. All sacrificed because I was too busy raising someone else's children to advance my own career. "Morgan? Are you listening?" I said, "I think we should tell the kids this weekend when they're all together at your place. Maybe with cupcakes or something cute?" Something snapped inside me, not dramatically like in movies, but quietly, like a rubber band stretched past its limit finally giving way. "No." The word came out firm, surprising even me. "No cupcakes? I guess we could do cookies instead." "No, Alison. Not cookies. Not cupcakes." No. No what? Her voice held genuine confusion. No, I can't do this again. I can't raise a fifth child. I can't rearrange my apartment, my career, my life again. I just can't. Silence followed, so uncharacteristic of my sister that I wondered if the call had dropped. Then her voice returned, higher pitched with indignation. What are you talking about? Nobody's asking you to raise this baby. I'm the mother. The absurdity of her statement made me laugh, a short, harsh sound devoid of humor. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, I've been more of a mother to your children than you have for the past 13 years. I'm the one who knows Tyler's allergies and Sophia's reading struggles. I'm the one who takes them to doctor appointments and stays up helping with school projects. I'm the one who's been there, Alison. Consistently. Reliably. While you've been playing mom when it's convenient. That's not fair. Her voice rose defensively. I work. I provide for them. You work sporadically. You provide partially. And every time your contribution should increase as they get older and more expensive, you add another baby to the mix instead. The dam had broken, and 13 years of suppressed frustration poured out. Do you have any idea what this has cost me? I haven't had a real relationship in a decade because what man wants to date someone already raising 4 children? I turned down a promotion because I couldn't commit to the hours. My savings are gone. My blood pressure is through the roof. I'm 32 and have nothing to show for it except your children's school pictures on my refrigerator. If we're such a burden, why have you helped all these years? Alison's voice turned cold. Nobody forced you. Because I love them. Because they're innocent in all this. Because someone had to be the responsible adult. My voice broke on the last word, tears finally breaking free. But I can't do it anymore, Alison. I'm drowning. So you're just abandoning them? Abandoning me? When I need you most? Her voice shifted to the wounded tone that had worked so effectively in the past. What about the kids? They need their aunt. They need their mother more, I said quietly. And it's time you stepped up and became one. For all 5 of your children. I can't believe you're doing this. Her voice hardened. After everything we've been through, you're just going to walk away when I tell you I'm pregnant? What kind of sister does that? I'm not walking away from the kids. I'm walking away from enabling you. There's a difference. I took a deep breath. I'll still be their aunt. I'll still love them and see them. But I won't be their primary caregiver anymore. I won't be your backup plan. You're being selfish, she hissed. Mom was right about you. That stung, but I held firm. If being selfish means not destroying myself to fix your choices, then yes, I'm being selfish. For the first time in 13 years. Fine. I don't need you anyway. I'll figure it out myself. That's exactly what I'm hoping you'll do, I said softly. For your children's sake as much as your own. The line went dead as she hung up. I sat motionless on my couch, surrounded by the evidence of a life that had never been fully mine, children's drawings on the refrigerator, tiny shoes by the door, a schedule on the wall covered in activities I managed but hadn't chosen. Then I did something I hadn't allowed myself in years. I put my face in my hands and sobbed, for the children caught in the middle, for the years I couldn't get back, and for the sister I loved but couldn't save from herself. But mixed with the grief was something unexpected, a tiny flicker of relief. For the first time in 13 years, I had chosen myself. The fallout was swift and brutal. My phone began ringing at 7 a.m. the next morning, my mother, her voice tight with disapproval. What is wrong with you, Morgan? Alison called me hysterical last night. She's pregnant and needs support, not judgment. I clutched my coffee mug tighter, fighting the familiar urge to apologize and backtrack. Mom, I've supported her through 4 children already. I've put my entire life on hold. I can't do it anymore. So you're just going to abandon your sister when she needs you? Those children need you. They need their mother more, I replied, echoing my words to Alison. And she needs to step up. Mom made a dismissive sound. You've always been the responsible one. You can't expect Alison to suddenly change her nature. That's exactly the problem. Everyone, including me, has allowed her to remain irresponsible because I've been there to pick up the slack. It has to stop. The conversation ended with my mother warning that I would regret turning my back on family. 20 minutes later, my father called from California. Your mother's pretty worked up, he began cautiously. I braced for another lecture, but instead, he sighed heavily. For what it's worth, I think you're right to set boundaries. I should have done more to help over the years instead of just sending money. That wasn't fair to you. His support, however distant, provided a small comfort as I prepared for the weekend, the first in years when I wouldn't have all 4 children in my apartment. When Friday evening arrived, only Jaden and Tyler appeared at my door, faces solemn. Alison remained in the car, engine running, clearly avoiding any interaction with me. Where are the girls? I asked, trying to keep my voice normal for the boys' sake. Jaden, always perceptive, answered quietly. Mom said they're staying home this weekend. She said we might not be coming over as much anymore. My heart contracted painfully. Alison was using the children as pawns, punishing me by withholding the girls while still sending the boys because they were too much trouble for her to handle alone. That night, after getting the boys settled with pizza and a movie, I found Jaden sitting alone on the balcony of my apartment, hugging his knees to his chest. Are you mad at Mom? He asked when I joined him. Is that why Sophia and Emma couldn't come? I chose my words carefully. I'm not mad, honey. I need to make some changes in how much I help out. Your mom and I are figuring out a new system. His 13-year-old face looked far too knowing. She depends on you too much. I hear her on the phone with friends sometimes, talking about how she can always get you to take us when she wants to go out. The casual confirmation of what I'd long suspected hurt more than I expected. Jaden, I want you to know something important. None of this, absolutely none of it, is about you kids. I love you, Tyler, Sophia, and Emma more than anything. But you're tired of taking care of us all the time, he finished, his perception uncomfortably accurate. I'm tired of being the only one taking responsibility, I corrected gently. There's a difference. Later that night, my phone buzzed with texts from extended family members. My Aunt Carol expressed support, having witnessed the imbalanced relationship for years. My cousin Rachel, however, was less understanding. Family helps family. Period. Can't believe you'd abandon those poor kids. The social media offensive began the next day. Alison posted a tearful selfie with a caption about unexpected pregnancy challenges and being abandoned by those I trusted most. Friends and acquaintances who knew only her curated version of our situation flooded her post with supportive comments, many containing thinly veiled references to my cruelty. One particularly painful comment came from a mutual childhood friend, "Those kids adore their aunt. Imagine how confused and hurt they must be that she suddenly doesn't want them around." I closed the app, fighting waves of guilt and doubt. Was I being selfish? Would this hurt the children more than it would help them in the long run? The weekend with just the boys felt strangely quiet. I kept expecting Sophia's chatter or Emma's footsteps running down the hallway. When Sunday evening came and Alison arrived to pick them up, she remained in the car again, sending Jaden to collect their belongings. "Tell your aunt thank you," I heard her instruct from the open car window, her voice carrying the artificial brightness she used when performing motherhood for an audience. Tyler hugged me fiercely before leaving. "Can we still call you, Aunt Morgan? If we need help with homework and stuff?" "Anytime," I promised, fighting back tears. "I'm always here for you guys." "That's never going to change." As their car pulled away, I returned to an apartment that felt emptier than it had in years. The silence I'd once craved now felt accusatory. The following week, I began therapy sessions with Dr. Marshall on a weekly rather than monthly basis, using the sick leave I'd accumulated over years of never taking time for myself. "What you're experiencing is normal," she assured me during our first session after what I'd come to think of as the ultimatum. "I feel like I've abandoned them," I admitted, tissues crumpled in my hand. "Especially the girls. Alison won't let me see them." "Your sister is using the children to manipulate you," Dr. Marshall observed. "By withholding access to the girls, she's hoping to make you feel guilty enough to resume your previous role." "It's working," I admitted miserably. "Setting boundaries isn't abandonment, Morgan. You haven't stopped loving those children or being present in their lives. You've simply stopped enabling your sister's irresponsibility." I began establishing a new routine. I texted all 4 children individually each day, good morning messages, questions about their day, good night texts. Alison couldn't prevent that digital connection, though I suspected she monitored the younger one's responses. 2 weeks after our confrontation, I received a tearful call from Sophia during school hours. "Aunt Morgan, can you come get me? I don't feel good and Mom's not answering her phone." I called the school directly, explaining I was still listed as an emergency contact but confirming they had attempted to reach Alison first. When I arrived, Sophia threw herself into my arms, her little body burning with fever. "I called Mom 3 times, she whispered, her voice hoarse. I took her to my apartment, gave her children's Tylenol, and tucked her into the bed that still had her favorite unicorn sheets. Then I called Alison repeatedly, finally reaching her after my 5th attempt. "Where have you been?" I demanded. "Sophia's school called you multiple times." "I was in a job interview," she snapped defensively. "Some of us are trying to improve our situations instead of just complaining about them." I bit back a retort about her responsibility to remain accessible during school hours. "Sophia has a fever of 101. I picked her up and she's at my place now." There was a pause, then, "I can't get her until after 6. I have another interview." The familiar pattern threatened to reassert itself, Alison creating a crisis, me stepping in to fix it, nothing ever changing. But something had shifted inside me. "You need to reschedule the interview or find someone else to pick her up," I said firmly. "I have an important meeting at work that I've already missed half of. I can keep her until 3 p.m., but then you need to be here." "You know what? Fine. I'll cancel the interview that could have given us better financial stability. Thanks for the support." Her sarcasm was cutting. "I support you becoming more responsible, Alison. That's what this is about." She hung up without responding, but appeared at my door precisely at 3 p.m., her expression a mixture of resentment and grudging respect for my boundary. As weeks passed, the family remained divided. My mother continued her subtle and not-so-subtle guilt trips. My father called more regularly, offering support from a distance. Extended family chose sides, holiday gatherings became potential minefields, and the children remained caught in the middle, confused, hurt, and adjusting to a new normal they hadn't asked for. The most painful moments came in small, unexpected bursts, discovering a tiny sock under the couch that belonged to Emma, hearing Sophia's favorite song on the radio, walking past the ice cream shop where we had our special Saturday treats. Each reminder sent fresh waves of doubt through me. Had I done the right thing? Or had I simply exchanged one form of family pain for another? 6 weeks after our confrontation, I ran into Alison and all 4 children at the grocery store. The awkward encounter began with tense adult politeness, but Emma, spotting me from the cart, squealed and reached out with such naked longing that something broke in both me and Alison. "Would you?" She began hesitantly. "Maybe you could come over for dinner sometime this week? The kids miss you." It wasn't an apology or an acknowledgement of the underlying issues, but it was an opening, a tiny crack in the wall between us. "I'd like that," I said simply. "I miss them too." The tentative dinner invitation marked the beginning of a new phase in our complicated relationship. That Friday evening, I arrived at Alison's apartment with a cautious heart and a grocery bag full of ingredients for the children's favorite meal, my homemade mac and cheese with hidden vegetables that even picky Sophia would devour. The children's reaction to my arrival was overwhelming. Tyler nearly knocked me over with his enthusiastic hug. Emma clung to my leg, refusing to let go for the first 20 minutes. Sophia showed me 5 new drawings she'd made for when you came back. Even teenage Jaden, trying to maintain his cool demeanor, couldn't hide his relief at seeing me. Alison hovered awkwardly in her own kitchen, clearly unsure of her role now that I was no longer automatically taking charge. The apartment was messier than I remembered, but not the disaster I'd secretly expected. The children seemed well-fed and adequately dressed, if not as meticulously cared for as when I was involved daily. "They've really missed you," Alison said quietly while the kids set the table. Her hand rested protectively over her still flat stomach, a gesture that didn't escape my notice. "I've missed them too," I replied, careful to keep my tone neutral. This wasn't the time for rehashing our argument or pointing out that she had been the one to restrict my access to the girls. Dinner was chaotic but joyful, the children talking over each other to share every detail of their lives I'd missed. Underneath their enthusiasm, I sensed a current of anxiety, as if they feared I might disappear again if they didn't sufficiently entertain me. "Are you coming back to stay with us on weekends?" Sophia asked directly as we cleared the dishes, her 7-year-old face serious. Alison and I exchanged glances. "We're figuring out a new schedule," I answered carefully. "But I'll definitely be seeing you all regularly." After the younger children were occupied with a movie in the living room, Alison surprised me by addressing the elephant in the room. "I got evicted from my last apartment," she admitted, voice low to prevent the children from overhearing. "That's why we moved here. The rent was overdue for months." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. Financial help was something I'd always provided. "Because you were right," she said, the words clearly difficult for her. "I've depended on you too much. After our fight, I realized I needed to figure some things out myself." It wasn't exactly an apology, but from Alison, this level of self-awareness was unprecedented. The fragile truce established that evening was tested just 2 weeks later when my phone rang at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Alison's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "I'm about to be evicted again. I'm 3 months behind on rent, and they gave me final notice today. I need $2,400 by Friday or we're out." My first instinct was to reach for my emergency credit card, the one I'd used countless times to rescue Alison from financial crises. But Dr. Marshall's voice echoed in my mind, helping isn't always giving people what they ask for. Sometimes it's giving them what they actually need. "I can't give you the money, Alison," I said firmly. Her shocked silence spoke volumes. In 13 years, this was the first time I'd flatly refused financial assistance. "What do you mean you can't? You always have emergency savings," her voice rose with indignation. "The kids will be homeless." "I didn't say I wouldn't help," I clarified. "I said I won't give you the money directly. What I can do is connect you with legitimate resources and help you apply for assistance." "I don't need charity," she snapped. "It's not charity. It's legitimate assistance designed exactly for situations like yours, a pregnant single mother with 4 children facing housing insecurity." Our conversation stretched late into the night, oscillating between Alison's anger and fear and my steady insistence on a different approach to help. Finally, exhausted, she agreed to meet me the next day at the county assistance office. What followed was a crash course in navigating social services. I took a personal day from work and spent 8 hours with Alison, moving from one agency to another. We applied for emergency rental assistance, SNAP benefits for the children, and connected with a nonprofit that provided case management for families in crisis. Her humiliation was palpable as she answered questions about her income, employment history, and children's fathers. More than once, she hissed that this was unnecessary humiliation when I could simply loan her the money. "This isn't about humiliation," I told her quietly while we waited for yet another intake interview. "It's about building a sustainable solution. My money would fix today but not tomorrow." By day's end, we had secured emergency assistance that would cover 2 months of her back rent, giving her time to stabilize. The experience was exhausting but productive, and more importantly, it established a new pattern for how I would help going forward. Over the following weeks, I created what I privately called the Alison Project, a systematic approach to helping my sister develop self-sufficiency. Instead of directly managing her children's needs, I focused on teaching her to do so. Rather than paying bills when she fell short, I helped her create a realistic budget and connected her with financial literacy classes offered free at the local community center. The transition wasn't smooth. Alison resisted many of my suggestions, particularly those requiring consistent effort on her part. Our conversations often ended in frustration on both sides. "You've become so judgmental," she accused during one particularly heated exchange about job applications. "It's easy for you to lecture me about responsibility when you don't have 5 children to worry about." 4 children and 1 on the way, I corrected automatically. "And I've been worrying about them for 13 years, so don't tell me I don't understand the challenge." Despite the friction, small changes began to appear. Alison secured a receptionist position at a dental office, not her dream job, but one with regular hours, health benefits that would cover her pregnancy, and the potential for advancement. She began using a calendar app to track the children's appointments rather than calling me in a panic when she forgot them. For my part, I established clear boundaries around my involvement with the children. We created a formal visitation schedule, dinner every Wednesday and alternating weekend days. I maintained my individual text conversations with each child, providing emotional support without undermining Alison's authority. The financial boundaries were harder but equally important. I opened education savings accounts for each child, directing the money I would have spent on their daily needs toward their futures instead. When Alison faced legitimate emergencies, I helped her problem solve rather than simply writing checks. The most significant breakthrough came when I found a family therapist willing to see all 6 of us, soon to be 7, on a sliding scale fee. Dr. Patterson specialized in blended families and complex family systems, and she didn't flinch at our unconventional situation. "What you're describing is not uncommon," she told us during our first session. "Family roles become entrenched, and changing them is painful for everyone, even when the changes are necessary and healthy." Through weekly sessions, we began the delicate work of redefining our roles. The children expressed their confusion and fears openly: fear of losing me, fear that Alison couldn't handle parenthood alone, fear of another baby changing their already precarious stability. "I'm scared you'll forget about us," Sophia admitted during one session, her voice small. "When the new baby comes." "I'm worried Mom will get overwhelmed again and just leave," Jaden added, the burden of his awareness far too heavy for a 13-year-old. Alison's face crumpled at their words, the reality of how her choices had affected her children finally breaking through her defenses. "I've let you all down," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I've been selfish and irresponsible, and I've put too much on your Aunt Morgan. But I promise I'm trying to do better now." It was the first time she'd fully acknowledged her role in creating our dysfunctional system, and though one moment of clarity couldn't erase years of patterns, it represented real progress. Dr. Patterson helped us develop a family responsibility map, a clear delineation of who was responsible for what aspects of the children's lives. Alison would handle day-to-day parenting, school communications, and medical appointments. I would support education planning, special occasions, and provide regular respite care to prevent burnout. The children, depending on their ages, received their own age-appropriate responsibilities. Even Emma, at 4, was assigned the job of putting her toys away each night, a small task that gave her a sense of contribution to the family system. 3 months after our initial confrontation, Alison called with unexpected news. "Jason wants to be involved with the baby," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of surprise and cautious hope. "He's been coming to the prenatal appointments and talking about getting a bigger apartment together." I tamped down my instinctive skepticism. "That's potentially good news. How do you feel about it?" "Scared," she admitted. "What if he leaves like all the others? What if moving in together is a mistake?" "Those are valid concerns," I acknowledged. "What does Dr. Patterson think?" The fact that Alison had discussed this with our therapist before calling me represented enormous growth. In the past, she would have impulsively moved in with Jason, then called me only when the situation imploded. She suggested we try couples counseling first before making any big decisions. Jason actually agreed. As her pregnancy progressed, Alison's relationship with Jason continued, not without challenges, but with a maturity I hadn't seen in her previous relationships. He began attending some family therapy sessions, genuinely seeming to care about integrating well with the existing children. The road remained bumpy. There were still nights when Alison called in tears because parenting 4 children while pregnant overwhelmed her. There were still moments when I had to remind myself not to swoop in and take over. There were still family members who didn't understand our new boundaries and criticized both of us, me for abandoning my sister, her for failing as a mother. But slowly, steadily, a new pattern emerged, one where Alison took primary responsibility for her children, and I supported rather than substituted. "You know what's weird," she said during one of our coffee meetups, now a weekly tradition while the kids were in school. "I actually feel more like their mother now. Before, I was just, I don't know, visiting my own life." For the first time in 13 years, I allowed myself to believe that real change might be possible. With the reduced childcare responsibilities, I found myself facing an unexpected challenge, figuring out who Morgan Reynolds was beyond the role of surrogate parent. After 13 years of organizing my life around 4 children's needs, the sudden expansion of free time felt both liberating and disorienting. It's common to experience identity confusion when a consuming role changes, Dr. Marshall explained during our weekly session. You've defined yourself as their caregiver for so long that stepping back creates a vacuum. She encouraged me to approach this phase as an exploration rather than a crisis. Think of it as getting reacquainted with yourself. What did you enjoy before your sister's children became your primary focus? That simple question stumped me. What had I enjoyed? Who had I been? The memories felt distant, belonging to a different person in a different life. I started small. One Tuesday evening, rather than automatically filling my free time with chores or work brought home, I signed up for a community ceramics class, something I'd been curious about but had never prioritized. Sitting at the pottery wheel, hands covered in clay, I felt a rush of creative joy I'd almost forgotten was possible. The instructor, Melissa, became my first new friend in years. "You're a natural," she encouraged as I shaped a wobbly but recognizable bowl. When she invited me to join the class regulars for drinks afterward, I surprised myself by accepting rather than automatically declining due to childcare obligations. That night, sipping wine and laughing with strangers who knew nothing about my complicated family situation, I caught a glimpse of a Morgan who existed independently from the drama and responsibilities that had defined me for so long. My apartment began to transform as well. I didn't remove the children's presence entirely. Their photos still held places of honor, and the spare room remained ready for visits, but I reclaimed spaces for myself. The living room bookshelf, once dominated by children's titles and school projects, gradually incorporated novels I'd been meaning to read for years. I splurged on an impractical white armchair I would never have considered with sticky hands and juice spills as regular concerns. The financial impact of setting boundaries proved significant as well. Without constantly covering emergency expenses for 5 additional people, my savings account began to recover. 6 months after our confrontation, I met with a financial advisor to restart my long-abandoned plan to purchase my own home. "Based on your current savings rate, you could be ready to buy within 18 months, she informed me, reviewing my updated budget. The timeline would have been impossible under my previous financial commitments. I left her office with a concrete plan and a sense of future possibility I hadn't experienced in years. My professional life blossomed with similar potential. Without the constant interruptions for childcare emergencies, my performance at work improved noticeably. Barbara, my supervisor, commented on the change during my quarterly review. "Your focus and consistency have been exceptional these past few months," she noted. "If this continues, I'd like to discuss that director position when it opens up again next year." The prospect of career advancement, once reluctantly abandoned for family obligations, now seemed achievable. I enrolled in the evening MBA program I'd previously declined, arranging my schedule so classes fell on nights when I wasn't with the children. The most unexpected development in my personal renaissance came from an unlikely source, Ryan, the quiet IT specialist whose office was down the hall from mine. We'd interacted professionally for years, but I'd never considered him romantically, or anyone, really, given my complicated home situation. When he asked if I'd like to grab coffee after a particularly intense system upgrade we'd both stayed late to complete, I almost reflexively declined. I should get home too. I began, then realized there was no legitimate end to that sentence anymore. Actually, coffee sounds great. Coffee led to dinner the following week. Dinner led to a movie, then more dinners, and gradually, a tentative relationship began to form. Dating at 32 after a decade-long hiatus proved both exciting and terrifying. The rules had changed, my body had changed, and certainly my circumstances remained far from simple. So let me get this straight, Ryan said one evening as I attempted to explain my family situation. You've been raising your sister's 4 kids, but recently established boundaries, and now you're an aunt rather than a primary caregiver, but still very involved, and she's pregnant with a 5th child? I winced. It sounds crazy when you summarize it like that. He considered this, then shrugged. Families are complicated. My brother lived with me for 3 years after his divorce. You do what you need to for the people you love. His easy acceptance of my unconventional situation felt like permission to integrate all parts of my life rather than compartmentalizing. When he suggested meeting the children after we'd been dating for 3 months, I was both nervous and touched by his interest in this crucial part of my world. That meeting went better than I could have hoped. Ryan brought age-appropriate activities for each child, a coding game for tech-interested Jaden, art supplies for creative Sophia, building blocks for Emma, and sports equipment for energetic Tyler. His genuine interest in getting to know them, without either overreaching or keeping excessive distance, impressed both me and Alison. He's good with them, she observed afterward, her approval meaningful despite our complicated history. As my personal life expanded, my relationship with the children evolved as well. Without the stress of daily parenting responsibilities, our time together became more focused on quality than quantity. I learned to be fully present during our visits rather than constantly multitasking through household management. You laugh more now, Jaden noted during one of our one-on-one outings, a new tradition where I spent time with each child individually each month. We were at a science museum, examining a display about space exploration that had captured his interest. Do I? I asked, surprised by his observation. He nodded seriously. Before, you were always worried about something. Making sure we did homework or had the right clothes or weren't late for stuff. Now you just hang out with us. His insight humbled me. In trying to provide stability, I'd sometimes forgotten to provide joy, for them and for myself. My relationship with Alison remained the most complex area of growth. Years of resentment and enabling patterns couldn't be undone overnight, and we still had occasional flare-ups of old dynamics. But gradually, a more balanced relationship began to take shape. She called one evening, her voice tentative. The kids' school has this parent training program about supporting academic success at home. I was wondering if you'd go with me? Not because I can't handle it, she added quickly, but because I think we could both learn some good strategies. The invitation represented a new kind of request, not for me to take over a responsibility, but to partner with her as she handled it herself. We attended the workshop together, took notes, asked questions, and afterward discussed how to implement the suggestions across both households for consistency. Our support group for family members of people with dependency issues became another unexpected avenue for growth. Initially, I joined seeking strategies for dealing with Alison, but gradually recognized patterns in myself that needed addressing as well. Codependency doesn't just affect the person being enabled, explained Gloria, the group facilitator. It warps the enabler's sense of self until their identity becomes wrapped up in being needed. Her words struck uncomfortably close to home. How much of my self-worth had become tied to being the responsible one, the fixer, the person who sacrificed for others? Learning to value myself independently of what I did for others became a central focus of my personal work. Physical changes accompanied my emotional growth. The stress-related symptoms that had prompted my doctor's warning began to subside. My blood pressure returned to normal ranges. The stress headaches that had been almost constant companions decreased in both frequency and intensity. I even lost weight without specifically trying, simply a result of having time to prepare proper meals rather than grabbing whatever was fastest between childcare crises. "Your labs look much better," Dr. Rivera noted during my follow-up appointment. "Whatever changes you've made are working." 6 months into this new chapter, I still struggled with occasional guilt, particularly when the children faced challenges I wasn't there to buffer. When Tyler failed a math test, my first instinct was to blame myself for not being there to help him study. When Sophia had a birthday party conflict, I immediately wondered if I could have prevented the scheduling problem had I been more involved. "You're not responsible for solving every problem in their lives, Dr. Marshall reminded me. Children need to develop resilience by facing age-appropriate challenges with appropriate support, not by having an adult eliminate all obstacles. Intellectually, I understood this principle, but emotionally, the adjustment continued to be difficult. Progress wasn't linear. Some days I felt confident in the healthier boundaries I'd established, other days I questioned whether I'd been selfish in prioritizing my own well-being. The most poignant moments came when I witnessed Alison genuinely growing into her role as a mother. Watching her handle a parent-teacher conference with confidence, or successfully navigate Sophia's emotional meltdown without calling me for backup, filled me with a complicated mixture of pride, relief, and a twinge of something like loss. For years, being needed by her and the children had been central to my identity. Their increasing independence, while healthy and necessary, required me to redefine my place in their lives. "It doesn't diminish your importance to them," Ryan observed one evening as I processed these feelings. "You've just shifted from being their safety net to being their cheerleader. Both roles matter." His perspective helped me recognize that stepping back hadn't meant stepping away. I was still deeply connected to those 4 children, soon to be 5 with the new baby's arrival. The nature of the connection had simply evolved into something healthier for all of us. As Alison's due date approached, I focused on finding my balance between supportive sister and autonomous individual. I attended her baby shower, helped prepare the nursery, and arranged my schedule to be available during her delivery, all while maintaining my own expanding life, complete with classes, friends, romance, and personal goals. For the first time in 13 years, I felt capable of loving my sister and her children without losing myself in the process. Mason James Reynolds arrived on a crisp October morning after a relatively straightforward 7-hour labor. Unlike her previous deliveries where I'd been the primary support person, this time Alison had both Jason and me in the delivery room, him holding her hand and coaching her through contractions, me capturing photos and providing additional encouragement. Watching my sister cradle her newborn son, exhausted but radiant, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This was how it should have been all along, Alison fully present as a mother, supported by a partner who chose to be there, with me in a loving but secondary role. "Do you want to hold your nephew?" she asked, carefully transferring the tiny bundle into my arms. Looking down at Mason's scrunched face, I felt the familiar rush of aunt love without the underlying anxiety that had accompanied his siblings' births. This time, I knew I wouldn't be responsible for midnight feedings or daycare pickups or doctor's appointments. I could simply love this child as his aunt, a gift rather than a burden. "He's perfect," I whispered, gently stroking his cheek. "You did good, Ollie." She smiled tiredly. "We did good. All of us." The months following Mason's birth revealed just how much had changed in our family system. Alison and Jason adjusted to life with a newborn while managing the 4 older children with surprising competence. They'd moved into a 3-bedroom apartment, cramped but functional, with Jason contributing consistently to household expenses. The children adapted to their expanding family with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Jaden, now 14 and firmly in teenage territory, affected casual disinterest in the baby while I occasionally caught him showing Mason his homework or softly explaining scientific concepts to the infant. Tyler appointed himself official baby entertainer, constantly making faces and silly noises to earn Mason's rare smiles. Sophia vacillated between helping with baby care and resenting the attention he received, while Emma alternated between treating him like a living doll and ignoring him entirely when his existence proved inconvenient. In other words, they were a normal, imperfect, functioning family. My role settled into a comfortable rhythm. I hosted the older children for weekly dinners and monthly individual outings. I babysit occasionally when Alison and Jason needed date nights. I attended school performances and sports games, cheering as proudly as ever. But I no longer carried the weight of daily parenting responsibility, and the difference in my physical and emotional well-being was profound. 6 months after Mason's birth, I closed on my own home, a modest 2-bedroom cottage with a small backyard and a front porch perfect for morning coffee. After 13 years in the apartment that had served as emergency housing for 6 people, having a space that was entirely mine felt like an almost unbelievable luxury. "It's beautiful," Alison said sincerely during the housewarming gathering. She surveyed the living room with its cream-colored furniture that would have been impractical with small children, the bookshelves organized by genre rather than interspersed with toys, the delicate glass vase that would have been broken within hours in our previous arrangement. "I never realized how much you gave up for us," she added quietly when the children were occupied in the backyard. "Not just the stuff, but the ability to have your own space, your own life." "I don't regret helping," I told her honestly. "I love those kids more than I could ever express. I just needed to find a balance." "I know. And I'm sorry it took me so long to step up." She hesitated, then added, "Thank you for not giving up on me completely, even when you had every right to." It wasn't a perfect resolution. Alison still occasionally slipped into old patterns of expecting me to solve problems she should handle herself. I still sometimes overstepped boundaries out of habit, offering unsolicited advice or taking over tasks unnecessarily. Old dynamics don't disappear overnight, especially those established over 13 years. But the overall trajectory was undeniably positive. Alison maintained her receptionist position at the dental office, eventually training for additional responsibilities that came with higher pay. Jason remained present and involved, marrying Alison shortly after Mason's first birthday in a small ceremony where all 5 children participated. My professional life flourished as well. The director position opened as predicted, and with my improved performance record and newly acquired MBA coursework, I was selected from among several candidates. The promotion came with challenges, longer hours, greater responsibilities, office politics, but feeling competent and valued in my career provided satisfaction I'd almost forgotten was possible. My relationship with Ryan deepened gradually, neither of us rushing a connection that had begun later in life than most. By Mason's first birthday, he'd become a welcome addition to family gatherings, easily bantering with Jaden about computer games or helping Tyler practice soccer moves. "You know, they're a package deal with me," I told him one evening as we walked back to my cottage after dinner with the family. "I'll never be completely independent from them, even with the healthier boundaries." He squeezed my hand. "I wouldn't want you to be. Those kids are part of what makes you who you are. I'm just glad there's room in your life for me too now." The journey toward healing extended beyond just Alison and me. Our mother, initially critical of my boundary setting, gradually recognized the positive changes in both her daughters. "You were right," she admitted during a rare moment of vulnerability. "I enabled Alison too, expected you to pick up the slack, and never really helped either of you become independent. I'm trying to do better now." Family gatherings evolved from tense affairs filled with undercurrents of resentment to genuinely enjoyable connections. The children, sensing the improved dynamics between the adults and their lives, showed decreased anxiety and improved behavior. One evening, about 18 months after our initial confrontation, I arrived at Alison and Jason's apartment for our weekly dinner to find an unusual scene: Jaden at the kitchen table working on algebra with Alison beside him, patiently helping him work through problems. Tyler and Sophia were setting the table without being prompted, while Jason entertained both Emma and Mason. It was simply a normal family evening, nothing extraordinary except for how ordinary it was, and how impossible such a scene would have seemed 2 years earlier. Later, as Jason cleared dishes and the children scattered to various activities, Alison and I found ourselves alone on their small balcony. "Do you remember when we were kids?" she asked, "and we used to talk about what kind of mothers we'd be someday?" I nodded, recalling our childhood games with dolls and elaborate family scenarios we'd invented. "I always said I'd be the fun mom who never made her kids do homework or clean their rooms," she continued with a self-deprecating smile. "And you always insisted on making your doll eat vegetables and go to bed on time." "We were showing our personalities even then," I agreed. "I never thought I'd actually become a responsible parent," she admitted. "It seemed impossible, like something other people did. It was easier to let you handle everything. But you know what? I'm not terrible at it. I mean, I'm not perfect, but the kids are okay. They're actually okay with me in charge." The pride in her voice brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "They're more than okay, Ollie. They're thriving." We stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. "We broke the cycle," she said finally. "Mom never really figured out how to be a parent after Dad left. She checked out. You and I could have just repeated that pattern forever, me being irresponsible, you overcompensating, neither of us actually healthy. But we didn't. We found another way." Her insight struck me with its clarity. In our own imperfect manner, we had indeed broken a generational pattern of dysfunction. The boundaries I'd established, painful as they were initially, had created space for Alison to grow into her potential as a mother rather than remaining perpetually dependent. The journey had been messy, difficult, and far from linear. There had been tears, accusations, periods of silence, and painful confrontations. But on the other side of that necessary upheaval was something precious: 2 sisters finding healthier ways to love each other and 5 children experiencing more stable parenting than either Alison or I had received. As I drove home that evening to my peaceful cottage where Ryan waited with a movie queued up and no emergency childcare calls anticipated, I reflected on the complex nature of love and boundaries. True love wasn't martyrdom or enablement. Sometimes the most loving choice was stepping back enough to allow others to step forward into their own strength. For 13 years, I'd believed love meant sacrifice to the point of self-erasure. Now I understood a more nuanced truth: love required both generosity and boundaries, both giving and limits. In finding that balance, I hadn't abandoned my family, I'd given them, and myself, the gift of healthier relationships that could sustain us all through whatever challenges life presented next. The greatest lesson wasn't that I needed to choose between family obligations and my own sanity, as I'd initially framed it. Rather, I'd learned that prioritizing my own well-being ultimately served everyone better than my self-sacrifice ever had. By reclaiming my life, I'd created space for Alison to claim hers as well. And in that space, we all found room to grow. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you balance your own needs with your love for them? Share your experiences in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about family dynamics and personal growth. Thanks for watching, and remember that sometimes the bravest, most loving thing we can do is believe in someone's capacity to stand on their own.